Hey everybody, welcome to J Stern Designs. Today's Quick Tip Thursday, and it's also a continuation on our jean skirt adventure. So today what we're going to talk about is how to embellish your skirt with machine applique. And before I give you some examples of various threads, needles, fabrics, I want to show you a basic overall design and how I sort of thought about it before I did it. On the skirt I have next to me, I used a sort of a floral motif that I fussy cutted to make an overall design. And you'll notice in the front up by the waist, I started by sewing down my front pocket opening. So you can either leave pockets open or you can sew them shut depending on what your design is. But in this case, I sewed this pocket shut and then I laid out these pieces. And what you're going to do is you're going to use something called steam-a-seam, and you're going to fuse it to the wrong side of the fabric, and then you're going to press it on and then fuse it into place. So you can play with the pieces before you actually fuse them on. So the first step would be to fussy cut them and lay them out, and then what you do is you fuse them on. I just wanted to show you the overall design. I started in the front, and this shaped insert is going to be there before you start embellishing, but you'll notice I used one of the motifs to sort of cover the top edge of that, and then I worked up from there. And I kind of wanted to have a design that went from front to back. So you can see that I tucked in flowers along my gusset that I added to make these jeans fit, and I kind of finished it by sort of overlaying on the back pocket. So then in the back what I did is I used some floral and swirly fabric motifs to embellish the top of my back godet. And you'll notice my godets are made from the same fabric that I am using for applique, which is kind of cool. It kind of draws together the whole design. All right. So also I added a little detail above the side godets, and I used a smaller motif over my godet, and then I filled in my godet with this cathedral window technique. It's sort of a pleated insert that I'm going to show you how to do. And I also did free motion stitching. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. There's machine applique, there's free motion stitching, and there's also decorative stitching. And you'll notice I use this sort of a candle wicking decorative stitch to add a lot of interest to the side godets. And then I continued with my my applique design by adding a floral motif to right on top of my pocket on the side. So this pocket is also sewn down. And I added some to the back and curled around the bottom of this pocket. So I didn't do a symmetrical design on both sides. I wanted it to be sort of interesting and different. So that's something you can think about, like what is your overall design going to be? So like on this one, I'm sort of going down, and on this one, I just have one little peak of an applique. So it just makes it a little bit interesting to have an asymmetrical design, I think. I mean, you can do beautiful stuff with symmetrical designs as well, so I don't want to say that's not a good option because it also is. But in this case, I wanted to do something different. But you'll notice my sides, while I did a overall asymmetrical design, my godets have similar embellishment on them. So I used a similar swirl on both left and right godet, and then I did a similar decorative stitching technique on the actual denim itself. So you can mix and match how you do things the same on the sides, left and right, or you can do different things on the sides, left and right. And you can also change up what you do in terms of your overall design. So that's sort of how I plan this. And really, I like to do it as work as I go. So I would maybe start in the front and work with that. And then I'd look at the back and I'd add a little. And then I'd say, well, is that enough? No, I want to add some more. Or, maybe I put this flower here and then I decided, well, I really want it to be different than the other side. So let's add a little bit more. So just know that you're not, there's no pressure to come up with your whole design when you start working on this. You can add a little, step back and look at it, add a little more, step back and look at it, and then you'll end up with your overall design when you're finished. And finishing is an interesting topic in itself because you kind of have to know when to say, okay, I've added enough, or, oh, I need a little bit more. So just think about it like each piece of fabric is an individual design, and you're adding and adding and adding until you get the overall effect you want. And that's basically how I create my designs for my skirts. On this skirt, I did not sew over the pockets. I mean, I did not sew both pockets closed. This one I did, but you'll notice on this pocket, I just added a little floral design on the pocket facing, and I can still use this pocket. So, you know, you don't have to sew through or sew down your pockets. You can leave them open. So now let me show you some examples of different fabrics that could work well, and different thread colors, and the notions you're going to need to do machine applique. Okay, fabrics that are really contrasty are going to pop off the denim. And sometimes you want elements to pop off, but you don't want everything to pop off, or else it'll be really, really loud. So you want to pick a fabric that's got some coloring that will blend and sort of knit into the denim and anchor the design. And then you want some color that will create a contrast. So this is an example of a fabric that's got very bright motifs, but it also has some dark in the background. So if you want something that pops, but also, you know, holds to the denim, this would be a good choice. And you notice a fabric like this is a batik. It's got lots of different colors you could choose from. So you can do a lot of cool things with this. This fabric has some cool motifs that you could cut out. This would be very fussy, and it would be a little bit loud because you'd have to include some of this aqua color within the design. But this tan color is very similar to my top stitching. So if I wanted a bright skirt, I may be able to make this work by cutting out, you know, maybe an individual flower and leaving just a little of the blue inside. The other option is you could thread paint over this blue to even anchor it more. So this would be an example of a fabric you might need to thread paint over, or add some more stitching to hide some of this blue, or just let it peek out. My favorite thing to do is to pick out something that's got, you know, similar to denim background with a neutral color. So I like things like this. I also like, you know, if you wanted to do something that's got, you know, some metallic in there that's kind of pretty, but again, it's got a lot of dark that will come with the motifs when you cut them off. This could be pretty. Here's another version of this floral. So these would be fabrics that would sort of be very tone on tone once you've stitched them on, even though you have this tan showing. You know, and I have a lot of batik fabric, and like this one I love because while it doesn't have a lot of the blue, you know, you could cut away a lot of the blue, but these colors have blue in them. So this would be a very subtle design to work with, but it would show. So I kind of like that. And you have different elements. You have the little viney things you could cut out and stitch on, and you also have the bigger flower motifs. Okay, here's another example of a bright motif, but it's got the blue. Okay, so that could be interesting. This kind of fabric that's got sort of a reverse applique effect, I could cut out swirls of these dots, and that could be my design. And I could combine something like this and just use the gold dot sections, the swirly gold dot sections, and I could mix those in with, you know, something from, I don't know, like I could mix it in with this. So I'd be using just the dots, and I could mix it in with a floral, or I could find a fabric with gold flowers and use those. So think about the reverse of your design. I mean, the design in here is really these swirls, but this little dotted background could make an interesting option. All right, so those are some choices of fabrics. The next thing I want to talk about is your thread choices. I like to pick a spectrum of colors. I like to pick out a color that really blends with the background. Okay, so like I like blues and purples for that. Okay, and then I might pick, you know, a shade that's a shade lighter or brighter. So let's say I was using this fabric. Okay, so I might pick something that's a little bit bright, and then I'll pick some other neutrals that will blend in. So you want to pick an array of colors. Another thing you can do is use a variegated thread. So this has got a lot of different plum and violet colors mixed in, and it makes a nice effect because if you use decorative stitching, the colors of your little decorative stitches will change. And here's another version. I've got a greens. I mean, I wouldn't use that with this, but there's that. You may want to incorporate top stitching thread into your design. So, you could get top stitching thread and you could recreate some of the top stitching that you couldn't transfer from your cut pieces to your skirt. And if you want a pop of color, if you want a pop of shine, I like to use a thread called Hollow Shimmer from Sulky. It's actually a little ribbon of holographic material instead of an actual woven thread, instead of an actual fiber thread. It works really well. If you're going to use a metallic thread or a hollow shimmer thread, here's a traditional metallic you could use too if you wanted to. For these kinds of threads, you want to use a Metallica needle, and you want to use your sewer's aid on the spool. Okay, so you're going to need those things if you're going to use a metallic thread. And if you're using a top stitching thread, you need a top stitching needle, and I highly recommend a size 16. And for your regular threads, you can either use, these are cotton quilting threads, you could use rayon threads. And for those threads, you can just use your standard denim needle. You're going to want to use something sharp to sew with. So I like to use a denim needle when I'm working with just the regular threads. But if you're going to be using specialty threads that break easily, I would use the top stitching needle because it's got a bigger eye. So you're going to want to have these specialty needles. And the other thing you're going to need is steam-a-seam or some sort of double adhesive web to fuse your applique pieces on. So I've got this steam-a-seam light, and you can buy it in sheets. You can buy it in strips of different widths. All of these things you can use and combine with your applique, and you could thread paint with these things. Another thing you might want to consider is a specialty needle. You may want to do some double stitching. Schmetz makes a jean needle that's got a double needle, so you could play with that. And the other thing I'm going to play with on this skirt is using a wing needle. Now, a wing needle is going to actually make a hole as it stitches, and I'm anticipating by using this needle, I'm going to get interesting distressing when I wash my skirt because it's going to make these little holes. So I'm going to actually try that. This is something new I'm going to try when I'm working on this skirt. So these are just some examples of fabrics you can use, different threads. Think about threads and fabrics that blend in or match the color of your denim with other threads and elements of your fabric that pop out. So you can get a subtle look. The more your fabric and threads blend in, the more subtle it'll be. The more they pop out, the more loud the design will be. But you can get a nice balance by picking a fabric that has got dark elements and light elements within it, or you can combine a few different fabrics that are dark and light. So keep that all in mind when you're picking out your fabrics. And please, if you have questions, please email me, or you can send me pictures at info@jsterndesigns.com. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this quick tip on how to embellish with machine applique on your jean skirt. If you have any questions about fabrics, threads, needles, or anything really, you can post your comments below, or you can visit my blog at jsterndesigns.com. If you have any specific fabrics that you're curious about and you want to send me a picture via email, you can feel free to do that as well. My email is info@jsterndesigns.com. And, certainly feel free to do that or ask questions, and I'll get back to you. I hope everybody has a really nice weekend. And if you're part of the Atlanta ASG group, I can't wait to get down there and meet you ladies. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.